Ladies and gentlemen, I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Backrooms presentation. We are going to be breaking down just how banal some evil is. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm just going to point this out that recording a presentation makes sense, but recording just a video projector doesn't make any sense. You already have a video, it's on the projector. They still always get me with the VHS, thinking that my stream quality is low.
The world around us is ever-changing. Throughout this past century, we have seen the advent of countless innovations that have completely reshaped life as we know it. But with all of this growth comes a number of undesirable byproducts. Byproducts that, if left unchecked, have the potential to irreversibly scar our modern world.
Interesting. So they're actually presenting it as a climate change solution. Here's what's interesting to me is that right now there is there's this false idea that there's like a debate about climate change. And actually the goalposts have kind of shifted. For years, there was a fake narrative that the actual climate science was debatable as a theory. Now no one's debating it, but the new fake counter argument is that climate is changing, but it's completely natural and we shouldn't be worried about it. But in the 90s, the science was still pretty much in. The models were pretty much spot on. And what's fascinating is that even if you look at Civilization, the game series, the Civilization from 1996 had a climate change mechanic. If you built too many coal-fired power plants, your entire globe would heat up and it would turn some of your most productive lands into marshlands and deserts, meaning that it would take massive effort to remediate that issue and keep your cities from starving. It was actually a really spot-on reflection of the climate change mechanic. And while some parts of your globe would have benefits, increases, the fact that your most populous cities were in your most productive areas and suddenly those became deserts or swamps meant that the disconnect would starve huge segments of your population. And we knew this in 1996. So the fact that subsequent games of Civilization didn't include the climate change mechanic because it was seen as too politically sensitive. How did something become generally accepted and not up for debate in 96, and by 2006 was suddenly seen as too politically sensitive to talk about is sort of nonsense. And again, this is one of the most unrealistic part of this entire thing is that a corporation wants to solve climate change. But the reality is that any climate solution, and there's not going to be just one, right? It's going to have to be a whole bunch of things. But the only way to actually get anyone to implement it would be if somehow a company was to make an absolute fuckload of money.
As human expansion is projected to increase exponentially in the coming decades, we must account for these never-before-faced challenges in ways equally never-before considered. Here at Async, we believe we have found the solution: the low-proximity magnetic distortion system.
I love the idealized threshold.
What is the low-proximity magnetic distortion system? Using 32...
Let's see. Using blank, the low proximity magnetic distortion system, condensing blank, and allow detectable to by rapidly, at which point the proportionate enough for So what's interesting is these redactions, when you have redactions in a national security context, usually it is to prevent, classified information from getting out. And the classification authority actually derives from the President of the United States. So the fact that this has been cut out means that probably what we're seeing is a publicly releasable version of this data. And anyone can actually submit a Freedom of Information Act request looking for certain types of information from any government agency. And it's on the government agency to justify why they can't release certain information. So some of it, right, you have redactions like this, where there is a national security risk. They don't want that information to get out to the public. For example, if you were to submit a FOIA request for the design of nuclear warheads, for example, the government would review those plans and they would submit you something that looks like this, probably a heading. They may even sit there and say, hey, there's 186 pages of design documents that are classified and we can't release, right? They might give you just a cover letter. But you also have things like what's called deliberative documents. These are basically, there's a court case that says that government employees have a right in order to make the best decisions for the country, they have a right to be able to speak honestly about their ideas, whether that's critically about others' ideas, proposing their own, and the sort of chaotic nature of debating ideas means that sometimes people are going to put stuff out there that's like crazy or preposterous or ridiculous, or just an idea that's so bad that it may be seen as like unacceptably toxic. And the point is that in the deliberation, right, hopefully better, cooler heads prevail and the ultimate course of action is not decided, right? It's more reasonable. These deliberative documents are protected and can't be released. So for example, if you were to sit there and say, hey, let's talk, if they sat down, let's say Async was a government body, and the scientists sat down and said, come up with all the ways we can use the backrooms. And somebody was like, well, we could use it as a punishment for people to make them run away from the entity or be driven insane. And somebody goes, that's such a dumb idea. Well, imagine if a transcript of that meeting was to be leaked and suddenly the news headline is, scientist wants to trap Americans in backrooms, when like obviously he didn't. He just sort of spitballed, brainstormed ideas. You also, of course, have personally identifiable information. This would be things like a government employee's home address, their phone number, their family members. Health information is also protected. So if they were to say, write an email that says, hey, I need to go on leave for my chemotherapy, that would be redacted. So information like that is also redacted. Even though it's not a national security threat, it reflects the right to privacy that, at least for now, is enshrined in the Constitution in court cases.
Will be distributed across all points, allowing for cargo and personnel to seamlessly pass through their designated threshold. While our current threshold is limited in scale, future models will be able to span entire rooms, allowing for the transfer of larger vessels and equipment.
Oh, wait, do we have some... Let's back it up a little bit. Let's see if we had some interesting frames spliced in. No, we didn't. Okay. So what I think is really interesting is that they claim that they argue that the trained method of letting goods and services in is less efficient than driving trucks. This isn't so. If you had a narrow threshold, you want to maximize the amount of time that things are getting through the threshold. So what you would want to do is basically have as much stuff as possible passing through via railways, right? Because here's the thing, look, railways, you also need to be able to get the stuff out. That's another problem. So you would have to spend hours and hours bringing stuff in, then figure out some sort of system to efficiently remove empty cars. So you'd have to run it in via railway. You could probably just stack the cars on top of each other and then have 1 hour a day where you just send out cars. But you would have to have a rail yard to distribute all the different cargo, all to different points in the back rooms, right? it would be really, really complex to do. But the point is that when you have a narrow passageway like this, logistically, you want to do everything possible before the passageway to ensure that there's a nonstop, continuous flow of traffic into through the passage, through the narrow, like the narrow artery, so to speak. And you want to have a massive receiving operation able to process that stuff and make sure there's never a backlog. So, yeah, this is actually reflective of the cost savings over time of a completely free, infinitely repeating storage unit. And again, it's not actually true because, like we talked about, just to ensure a continuous flow of goods and services into a space or the back rooms, you would have to have a massive logistics operation on the front end and on the back end, right? You would have to ensure that inside the back rooms was a massive, massive logistics hub where they would receive goods, route them to different places in the back rooms for storage. You would have to ensure that the storage areas remained traversable and that they are sufficiently far away from each other. So, for example, you would have a situation where, a logical thing would be storing nuclear waste in the back rooms, right? It's toxic. It can't really be around people. If you could somehow do like carbon capture or even, even if you were just to use it as a storage facility, right? Nuclear waste, other industrial byproducts, toxic chemicals, ship and store them there. You're going to have to make sure that you don't accidentally run out of space. And I know what you're thinking. The back rooms have sort of infinite space, but it becomes inefficient to run. You have to run more and more track further and further into the back rooms as you filled up with more and more nuclear waste. All those things cost money. And in fact, they cost a lot of money. So while this may represent the fixed cost of running a hub, that's not really true. The more stuff in the back rooms, the deeper you're going to have to push it. Obviously, it's nothing compared to the steadily running out of space of, say, leasing an office or digging a giant cave in a mountain. But the costs are not zero and they're not fixed. Yeah, pretty scary to think. The total conventional storage on Earth is just tiny. This is probably my favorite part, is the idea that they can just put all sorts of like office space and shit in there. Yeah, industrial processing makes a lot of sense. That is actually a really good use of the back rooms. Now, again, the problem is if people work in the back rooms, you still sort of have the same problem, right? If there's an accident or a storage leak, then those people are going to be placed in danger. And the fact is, if you spilled, say, nuclear radiation right at the threshold or within a mile or two of the threshold, you're going to have the same stinking problem, which is that it's contaminated. Human beings can't go there. Storage and warehousing, that also makes sense if you've seen an Amazon logistics hub. But like we talk about, if you've seen an Amazon logistics hubs, Amazon doesn't have just one hub in the country. They have hundreds of huge warehouses that form hubs of logistics. So warehousing in this instance would be useful for things that cannot be disposed of, but also will not probably need to be accessed for the foreseeable future. A good example might be a museum's archive of historic artifacts, possibly you know, old books maybe, even like classified documents. Again, things that maybe have been exposed to radiation and aren't safe. But still, you see people will still have to walk by. Cubicles. Oh God, the fucking cubes. So here's the thing, guys. When you look at it, you realize that space isn't necessarily that important, right? Like, yeah, there's tons of office space in the country. If you've driven around, you realize there's so much unused office space. So it's not that crowded. It's about location. And the fact is, if you have to pass through this narrow threshold that's receiving goods constantly, right? Would you want to work in the back rooms? No, it's across the country. It might be across the world from you. So this is sort of a silly idea. And again, pretty preposterous, but the best thing for the back rooms is storing ultra high risk items. That's what it would be. It would also be possibly the ability to do activities in the back rooms that cannot be done in the larger world. Again, maybe you could build a nuclear fission reactor in the back rooms and run the power out of it so that you could just have an infinite power source for the entire West Coast potentially. That's an option, but you can't do it, right? It doesn't make any sense to put offices there. Fucking cafe. Oh my God. Video rental maybe? Yes, the back rooms will get a train before LA ever does. Yes, this is logical. Okay, what are we looking at here? Some sort of magnet or something? Oh, it's the airlock leading to the back rooms. Just need a fresh coat of paint. What psychopath would live there? I mean, obviously it's designed to be just terrible. I think their plan is literally to just like cover up the creepy fluorescent lights, which is a fine plan. But again, it's not going to offer any value that an apartment in Fresno or in Lincoln, Nebraska isn't going to offer you. You still need to like build it out. Like, yeah, I guess you don't need the like raw materials and stuff. You just have to furnish it. But I mean, this is the equivalent of living in a 1,000-story apartment building where there's one elevator, right? You just, the threshold is their biggest problem. Now, again, the thing to do here is store dangerous shit. That's it. Because if it leaks and spills and goes nuts, it's not gonna affect Earth. It's gonna affect the back rooms, which is way easier to mitigate. Oh, we had a flash of something. Backing it up, backing it up, backing it up, backing it up. How did we zip ahead this much? All right, there we go. Oh, it says most replayed. People really are into the... Oh, that's why it's the most replayed. Okay, it's security camera footage of the control room, and this says something. If anybody knows what it said, let me know in the comments. Trying to listen.
have encased wiring for sure.
Okay, so it's supposed to be the Department of Energy that's dealing with this, which actually makes sense. You may not know this. The Department of Energy, in addition to handling power plants and stuff, they also are responsible for the peaceful or all nuclear technology in the United States, including weapons. So the Department of Energy actually has a significant budget dedicated to the storage and handling of nuclear weapons, in addition to regulating nuclear power plants and things of that nature. That looks like a 90s Department of Energy official if I've ever seen one. That's pretty interesting that's what the back rooms look like. It's way too systematic. That's not it, right? It's a confusing, chaotic sort of network. Again, I'm curious, guys. What would you think would be good commercial applications for the back rooms? I have my ideas, but I want to know what you guys, what am I not thinking of would be the best thing to do inside the back rooms? If it wasn't for, the null zones and the entity and the creepy fungus. Oh, is that Marv coming back? Oh, maybe it's their way of saying the DOE ordered it closed.
Research and commercialization could have been expedited. Well, I'm glad you think that way. As a matter of fact, if you look to laws...
Well, he said commercialization has been expedited, so...
Page. You see critical technologies in the world by failure to recognize that by having a system of declassification of certain elements, having the industry be with us at that point. Sergeant, come over here. Sir, please take a look at this. If you could all just excuse me for 1 moment. My apologies. 1 moment, please. What is it? Well, it's information list.
Oh, so maybe it's trying to say that when Marvin came back, he came back at the most inopportune time when it was literally being examined by the Department of Energy, who was all on board until he showed up and proved that it was not as secure as they thought, and the DOE ordered it shut down. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Of course, if you want some combat video breakdowns that are too spicy for YouTube, be sure to become a member of the Patreon. Also, we're getting kind of close to that 100K mark of this channel. Hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one.